This lesson is going to be about dinosaurs. I've had several requests for dinosaurs, and actually they're a lot of fun. And it's important to try to have as much fun as you can with this sculpting process, because the more fun that you have with it, the more time you're going to put into it. The more time you put into it, the more time it gives your mind, your brain to develop those neural networks that are so important for the advancing of your ability down the road here. So in this lesson we're going to start with the Stegosaurus, and instead of showing you a completed design right off, I'm going to show you a kind of a proto form of the Stegosaurus, and I'm going to show you how to get to that point. And then what I'll do is I'll come back to it and put some of the final detail on. But once again, I've gone to Google, and I've captured a number of black and white examples, and you can see here we have one showing the skeletal structure, which is very important because based on the actual skeletons that they are able to put together, we can actually get a really good sense of the real animal's morphology when it was alive. And then what you're seeing in all these other ones are really interpretations of what the Stegosaurus was. And it's important to emphasize that these are interpretations because no one was really there to see what these, no humans were there to see what these dinosaurs really look like. So that gives us a lot of allowance to put a lot of our own creativity into what we think that the Stegosaurus may have really looked like as a live animal. So let's move on now to start the sculpture. Okay, so what we're going to start with is, instead of, like I said, instead of the actual detailed rendering that shows the forms of the Stegosaurus, I'm going to first get you to the stage, and where you see I have here is kind of a proto shape of dinosaurs, a whole group of dinosaurs that existed during the time. And you can see this is what the Stegosaurus's form looks like without all of the plates. And you can see here I've already kind of pressed out these plates, and I'll show you again how I do those. And here's some of the spikes that you'll see on the tail. Now here's a picture I collected, which is an old but very good rendering of what a Stegosaurus, what someone's interpretation of a Stegosaurus looked like. Now with some of the more recent finds in recent years, what you see the difference in a lot of interpretations of Stegosaurus is that the old idea was that all dinosaurs' tails were heavy and they dragged behind them. The new idea is that lots of dinosaurs, instead of having their tails dragging down like this, that they're actually raised up and much more erect. And depending upon what they were doing at the time, if they were more excited, running, perhaps their tail was more erect. If they were more alert, that tail may have been in a much more erect posture. And that's the posture that I've chosen for this particular design that I'm going to show you. The other thing I want to point out is that in all of the series that I'm doing, the sculptures that I'm doing for you are actually maquettes. So these are actually little models of whatever I would plan to do in a larger scale. For example, this Stegosaurus, and I'm going to turn it now to show you that I put a little bit more detail onto it, but this Stegosaurus, if I was going to actually do a sculpture, the real sculpture size that I would do would probably be about 18 to 20 inches long and perhaps a foot high. So what you're looking at would be the maquette that I would first start with in order to work out my idea. Okay, now that you've seen the other side where it shows a little bit more detail, what I want to do is I'm going to turn this back to this side where it shows the least amount of detail that I have, except for the most important forms that underlie the Stegosaurus. One other thing I want to point out, which is important about this stage, This form, what you'll find, is consistent with a lot of the species of dinosaurs that they've found. With slight variations, this form could also be used for things like Brontosaurus. And I want you to keep that in mind in case you want to do a Brontosaurus. And I'll just give you an example. I've made this little extension here to give you an idea of what it would look like with a Brontosaurus head. And you can see that a Brontosaurus may have a little bit longer tail, and maybe even a longer neck. But the basic shape that you would be doing for the Stegosaurus would probably serve you well to use if you're going to be working on a Brontosaurus of some other species that are related to them. So, okay, so let's move on now. The other thing I wanted to point out to you, in relationship to the tail and how interpretations of what the tail and how the tail is carried, with the way it kind of stands out like this instead of dragging down, is also an interpretation that is being made now based on new science and other animals like the Tyrannosaurus. And again, I will be doing a Tyrannosaurus Rex down the road here, and I wanted to just bring this to your attention at this point so that you can begin to think about the Tyrannosaurus, because we know that's one of the most popular of all the dinosaurs. And take a look here. You can see in this old rendition, this old illustration that someone did of a Tyrannosaurus. Once again, you can see the tail is down and dragging, where in the more modern versions, the tail is up in a very muscular posture. The other thing that's coming to be accepted these days is that Tyrannosaurus and many other dinosaurs actually had feathers, which is going to change a lot of what the final structuring of the animal is going to look like. But for now, what we're going to do is just deal with the basic structures, the basic primary shapes that form the dinosaurs that we readily recognize today. Okay, so let's move along here and start to make the forms on our Stegosaurus. I'm going to turn them around there from the more detailed side, and this is the side we're going to focus on. We're going to try to get you to this point. And when I get you pretty close to this point, then what I'll do from the original, or from the clay here that I'm going to be working on, this piece of clay, then what I'll do is I'll switch back to this to kind of move this design along. But I want to give you the basics to get you to this stage. And what's important is don't let any of these shapes intimidate you at all. With time, you're definitely going to be able to get these shapes for yourself. And I'm just here to speed the process up for you, to show you the easy way to get to it. So with that, let's start with this piece here. Now you can see I've taken a piece that I've estimated the mass to be very similar to this piece here. And like I said in the beginning, you can actually do your sculptures based on taking different forms, like a cylinder, modified cylinder to represent the legs, and you can do the additive technique of adding it on, or you can do what I do most of the time with my maquettes, which is I call morphing the clay. So that's what I'm going to start with, and then I'll go back and forth to show you where you can just easily use the technique of add-on. So let me start with this shape, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this guy off to the side here for a second. Hopefully you can still see him there. And I'm going to first start to shape the biggest appendage that the Stegosaurus has, which is that tail. And what I'm going to do is just start to move, kind of make a point coming out here, kind of roll my fingers and start to get that shape out. And again, you want to always kind of keep a perspective on the length of what it's going to be in your final design. And you can use your calipers as we go along to help you with that. But at this stage, what I want you to do is just to start to create the different geometric shapes, appendages that would come off of this central mass. And the central mass, of course, what we're talking about would be the thorax and the abdomen of the animal. All right, so I started with making a tail. All right, you can see there, tail we've got here. And now I'm going to already start to smooth this clay because I want to get some nice forms started here so I can keep a perspective on my shapes and their volume of them in relationship to the other parts. Alright, so now I've got a tail started here, and I'm making it about the same length as this guy, this original guy here that I was working on. And now I'm going to go to the front part, and just the way I formed the tail, by just moving the clay and smoothing it out and rolling it, that's exactly what I'm going to do. Just roll it like that in your fingers, and I'm going to start to form the basic head, neck and head shape. Alright, and then I'm going to do a little bending. See, it's kind of like that pointed, but then what I do is just kind of bend it up to create that little bit of a head shape, and then make the neck smooth out some of those other forms. And you can see that's the basic, just to get to this stage here, just to create that very simple form of the head. That's all you need to do is kind of bend that snaky tail-like structure over and just smooth it a little bit. Okay, like that. That's all I'm doing. Smoothing it down with my fingers. You can see at this stage I don't need any tools. Your best tools, once again, are your hands. Alright, so now I'm going to smooth out. I'm going to try to keep a nice straight line that represents the backbone. So you could even do, if you want to help you out, you could take your finger and just run down and create a little central line like that would go right from the top of the head, right down the back of the neck, all the way down to the tip of the tail. And then that'll help you to get a sense of the balance of the shape on either side. Alright, now what I'm going to do, start smoothing this clay down, and in the process what I'm doing is actually moving some of the volume, because if you take a look at this Stegosaurus, he's more narrow. If you look at him from the side, you can't really judge how broad he is this way. How broad he is this way by looking from the side. And that's the same thing that's true with a lot of photographs. That's why you need to get as many different positions of photographs as you possibly can to help you decide on what the shapes are. So, as you can see, I'm smoothing and moving that clay down. You can see what it looks like when I move it down. And as I'm moving it down, now what I'm going to do at this stage is I'm going to start to morph some of this clay to form the legs, the four legs. Now the other way you can do this, of course, is instead of the morphing like I'm doing, you could do the add-on, which would be to create a shape, something like a pork chop or a drumstick, a flattened drumstick, and that's how you would get to the stage of creating the back legs. You could just add them on and press that. Let me bring it forward here and press that onto the body. But because I'm going to do the morphing technique for the most part, I'm going to take this away and show you how to do it by morphing. So I'm pulling clay from other parts of the body. Move this over here. Now the front legs, as you can see, are smaller in mass than the back leg, especially the other part, upper part of the, which would be the hip, upper part of the leg, as well as the hip of the Stegosaurus. So we need a lot more mass towards the back of the leg, or the back leg. Alright, so you can see I'm moving that there to this location. Same on the other side. Once again, we're going to try to create a formal structuring here. Putting more clay towards the front. For the smaller leg, moving clay along and to the back for the back hind leg. That would be the back right leg. And you can see how, just at this stage, you can see how simple that is. Okay? But that's how you're going to get to this stage here, is by first making these shapes come alive. Now I'm going to start to move some of the forms a little more. And I'm going to start to create a little bit of a shoulder here, which you can see on this guy here, is that this is the shoulder area, and there's a bend there. So what I want to do is start to create a shoulder in that area. Okay, like that. And a little bend here, which would be the elbow. This is actually the elbow of the front leg. And then I'm going to move to the back leg. I'm going to pull some of this clay from the front to the back here, shifting some of that, morphing it backwards to the back legs, like that. And this area, which is a little hard because of the amount of flab and fat and everything that they would have in muscle back here, it masks a little bit, just the way that perhaps an elephant might. It masks where the different joints would be. So let me start to create those. Pushing that clay. First I'm going to create, the hip is up in here, in this region here. And the knee is actually in this region here, right about in here somewhere. So the leg actually would come, the bones would come kind of down like this and over and then forward, and then would be the toes. So this would actually, let me get a tool here to help show you that a little bit more correctly. This line here would be one bone in there. The other one would come back this way, and then this would actually be the heel here, and then this would be actually the extended kind of foot that would run down to where the toes are. Because once again, these animals, like the elephant, are standing on their toes primarily. Alright, so, and it's at that knee is where we're going to do I'm going to take my nail and I'm just going to make kind of a crease like that. Alright. I'm going to smooth that all over so you start to get a sense of that form there. You can see how I formed it. And then at the end here, where you could have like where it's like a stump, all I'm going to do to create that foot is just to bend it over just a little bit. Very similar to the way that I created the head. I take the end of that structure and I just bend it over to form a little bit of the foot where the toes are going to be. Alright, and so if you take a look here, you can see we're getting much closer to what this is. Now in this case, the leg is back further because this Stegosaurus, I have him in motion, walking. So as he moves his leg back, you're going to lose sight of where the knee and the heel are a little bit. Alright, so on the other side here, you can see I have the leg moved forward. So I'm going to, at this time, make a simple adjustment by simply pushing that leg forward like that. And we can worry about actually getting the more accurate detail, but at this stage I want to start to get that positioning.